Hey guys, so I have some good news if you're a fan of my book content or reading content, anything like that. I have some videos in the works coming your way very soon, including the one today where we will be ranking popular horror books that I've read. Obviously there's a million out there that are popular that I haven't read, so obviously I can only talk about the ones that I have indeed read. Now, I don't know if these are truly that popular, but they all have been talked about. Like, I've seen them being talked about on various platforms, and they all have over 15,000 reviews on Goodreads. So they're at least a little bit well known. So yeah, I'm just gonna rank some horror books today. In one of my famous tier lists, if you're new, I do a lot of tier lists and they don't make any sense and they're just kind of at random and however I feel like ranking them that day. I feel like I have to make this disclaimer that there is not one Stephen King book in this video. Now this is simply because I actually have not read his most famous works. I guess I read The Shining, but like I don't remember it that well. I haven't read it. There's things in it that just creep me out and I don't want to read it. Now I am a fan of Stephen King, obviously. I own a lot of his books, but specifically his short fiction is what I read him for, and his Richard Bachman books. Those are kind of my Stephen King vibe that I prefer. So there's no like popular Stephen King books in this video, okay? Plus, you know, we know about him. We know his books are probably fine. I just want to talk about the other ones that are more modern. Well, I don't want to say modern, but anyway, don't expect any King to pop up in this video, you know? Okay, so we are doing 4 categories today. I have 20 popular horror books to rank. So starting with top tier. Now I had to have a category that addressed this in some capacity. I'm jealous. So as a writer myself, and I use that term loosely because have I written anything this year? I actually have, but will I publish a book anytime soon? Probably not. Anyway, these are stories / books that I found really inspiring and wish that I thought of first, because they're definitely stories that are up my alley and just, you know, the top tier. I'm jealous of them. Next up, we have to have a category for cult classics. Now these could be cult classics in the traditional sense, that they're like a literal classic. To me, they become an instant classic, or they're ones that I think should be a classic. This category we're gonna call needs a target audience. It's a little bit long for a category, but just bear with me. So for the right person, for the right reader, these books are fantastic, but they definitely are more of a niche topic or ones that have mixed reviews. And then the last category, the worst of the worst. We're gonna do same story, different author. To me, the story isn't what is lacking in this. It's mostly the author that I have an issue with. And if the same story was written with a better author, I think it would have been a lot better, and the author just kind of did these books a disservice. So these are the ones that I just don't enjoy for one reason or another, but mostly because of the author. First up, we have my most recent read, actually. This is in a random order, obviously. My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. Grady Hendrix is very well loved in the horror community. I've read 2 of his books at this point. I own, I think, 3 of them, which I will be doing a whole video on my physical TBR list and all of the TBR books that I have, because I have so many physical books and I just keep buying more. I mean, that's such a trope at this point in the book community, but like I have too many, and I did stop buying because I can't. This one I actually bought years ago on my phone, so through Apple Books or whatever. So I recently read this on my phone. This one, I know exactly where I'm gonna put it actually. People might be upset. Target audience, you know, it's not a great book in my opinion. A lot of people recommended this book to me thinking I would love it because it has all these odes to the 80s. Every chapter is a different 80s song. I don't love the 80s, guys. I don't. If this took place in 2000s, hell yeah, 90s even. But I can't do the 80s anymore. I didn't find these characters likable at all. Like, it was a struggle. And then the movie just made it that much worse. So I'm just not a huge fan. I think I gave it 3 out of 5. It's just not my favorite. It's a target audience. It's a niche topic. I liked the concept of the exorcism. I thought it was funny. It's definitely very campy. I think Grady Hendrix does a great camp book. All of his books are pretty campy. So again, that's not going to be for everyone though. So it needs a target audience. Next we have The Cabin at the End of the World by Paul Tremblay, which is now going to be an M. Night Shyamalan thriller, and I'm so excited for that. As you know, I've talked about it multiple times on the channel already. This one I think became more popular since that announcement, so I'm including it, even though he, I think, has more popular works. But this book is phenomenal. I absolutely love this book. I feel every single emotion from disgust to crying. It did make me cry. But Paul Tremblay, I think, is just a classic author already. Like, I think any of his books could be classics because they're just so easy to like. He writes very differently, or not, his style isn't different, but like his stories are so varied that I feel like there's something for everyone in his catalog of works. And I really love Cabin at the End of the World. It's not my favorite Paul Tremblay book, but I did include my favorite Paul Tremblay book. But this story is really great and really strong, and I really love the book. So cult classic. I'm gonna call it an instant classic. I think everyone should give it a chance. I think it's really good. Ooh. Dark Places by Gillian Flynn. I actually really dislike Dark Places. I just don't think this author is for me, and I have no interest in reading anything else from her, to be honest, because I've heard her writing is very similar to this. I don't like how she writes characters. I don't find any of the characters likable at all, and the story's fine. Like, it's intriguing. It's just not my thing. I don't know. I'm not into like the crime and the bleak and the dry narrating and things like that. So this one is definitely a bottom tier for me. Maybe the story would be better by someone else. I don't know. But the story too is just, that's just not a good one to me. Next up we have Final Girls by Riley Sager. I have a couple of his books in this video, and I have some personal issues with Riley Sager. However, one of the books of his is really good. But I've read 3 now, and I think 1 out of 3 not really hitting it for me. It's just not my author. It's something about the deception to me. I'm just gonna come right out and say that the way he writes women is horrid, and I don't like a specific trope that he uses in every single one of his books except for my favorite book that I've read from him. So again, I know that there is a Final Girls support group by Grady Hendrix. I own it, haven't read it yet. I do plan on it. I think I'll like it a little bit more, but again, this story would be fine. Different author. I can't do it. Maybe if it was written by a woman, I don't know. Unless we're talking about Home Before Dark. This is the one book that's actually in, as of right now, my top 5 books of all time. I really enjoyed this one and how it was written. I absolutely loved the jump from different books. If you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. Should I talk about what these books are about? I just assume, because I'm ranking popular books, that most people know what they're about. If not, look it up. Look up the good ones in this video. The good ones are obviously top tiers of the ones I recommend. So anyway, I really like the writing in this one and how he wrote this book. Just the style of it. The concept of it is so cool. I would love to see it being adapted into a movie of some kind and doing time jumps. That would be incredible. So that is definitely a story I'm jealous of, and it does inspire me to kind of do a time jump story myself. I do write short fiction, so I'm not sure how I would really go about that, but definitely a jealousy situation here because I love it. Haunted house kind of supernatural vibes, time jumping, it's great. Here we are, my favorite book of all time, Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay. This is such a great book. I love this. I can't fault it. There isn't one thing I would change about it. Obviously I'm jealous of it. I love the reality TV aspect. Obviously I love reality TV, and I love that little side plot in there. I think it's so effective for this kind of story. It's kind of like an exorcist or like an exorcism possession story, but also like questioning is that really what's going on? I love the characters. They're really well written, especially from the perspective of a young girl. I just think this book is flawless. Like, I really can't fault it. So wish I came up with it first. Probably also an instant classic, so it could definitely go in either of the first two categories, but we're just gonna put it in I'm jealous because the reality TV, I gotta include that at some point in one of my stories, that there's like a reality TV angle, because I know so much about it. I'm basically a reality TV scholar, so why not incorporate that into my writing? Write what you know, right? This next one might be a little bit obvious. The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. This book is great. I really love this. I'm not really a huge fan of like classic literature. I read a lot of it in school, like a lot. And that I kind of got burnt out on reading like old classic literature. It's just not my thing, and that's fine. You can see all the inspiration that Mike Flanagan had for the series, which I really love. Obviously, this gotta go in cult classics because it is a classic, period, and I do recommend everyone read it. There are some scenes that are genuinely scary, but overall, to me, the way it's written isn't that scary, but I actually really love the character development in this. I love the dialogue specifically and all of the character interactions in this book. Next, we have another Grady Hendrix. This one I read a long time ago, so forgive me. I do remember most of it. But again, like I said, he does camp. This is like the ultimate camp, but this one was way more effective for me than My Best Friend's Exorcism. And this one was so entertaining. I highly recommend this one. It's so much fun. Imagine just being trapped in an IKEA. Obviously, it's like in an IKEA and there's like supernatural stuff going on. It is bizarre and weird, and like, how did he even come up with this is my question. You know what? I think I'm gonna put it, I know where I'm gonna put it. I'm gonna put it in I'm jealous. I think it's a great idea to put the setting, or make the setting, an IKEA. Now, it's not literally IKEA because they can't do that because of copyright, but it's very clearly like a Swedish furniture store. Okay, next we have some Ruth Ware. Now, Ruth Ware definitely writes more thrillers than horrors, so, you know, I get it. It's not super horrific, but she has some solid books. They're very basic, I would say, basic whodunit type thrillers. And every single book of hers is pretty much the same formula over and over again. I think I've read 3 at this point. But it's just like simple. They're very simple, straightforward mystery thrillers. And I do recommend them for the right people. So, given that, needs a target audience. They're not classics. They're not phenomenal. They're not inspiring to me as a writer. But they're solid. They're solid books. You just have to have the right people reading them, I think. Into the Drowning Deep by Mira Grant. This book was really great. This was a recent read for me as well. Killer mermaids. The horror in this is disgusting. Like, it's very gross in the best ways possible. I absolutely loved the descriptions of the mermaids in this. Horrifying. And there were so many great horror moments in this book. I love any type of horror book that revolves around water. I think it's just so scary, something really scary about it. However, all of that being said, it is a top tier book for me personally, but it does need a target audience. I just feel like this type of killer mermaid storyline isn't going to be for everyone and is not the type of horror that's going to be effective for everyone. But if you're looking for something like more creature feature, supernatural, weird stuff going on, definitely read that book. Okay, next up we have Kill Creek by Scott Thomas. This book, the potential of this book, I went on a rant in a previous video when I reviewed this book. The potential of this was murdered, and I mean that literally and ironically, by the author. It was destroyed because of the author. Now, that's rude. I don't want to say destroyed. I think I still gave it 3 out of 5. Maybe 2.5 out of 5, but that's because how badly the author did a disservice to the characters in this book. For absolutely no reason either. The story is so cool, having authors come together to stay at this house. The concept, oh my gosh. A little bit of that reality TV spin on it, you know? Obviously though, it's gotta go in different author. This is the ultimate example of same story, different author would have been so much better because the story potential so great. It would have been all the way at the top of I'm Jealous, because the concept alone I would have loved to write. But the author, the way he writes women, horrendous. He's fat phobic in this book. I just can't. I can't deal with how he describes people physically. Like, what does their physical appearance have anything to do with the story? Like, I understand you could add in a couple things so we can help picture the characters in our mind. That's standard in a story, right? Why are we going that in depth about their weight, their boobs? I don't need it. I don't need it. So definitely different author would have done that story way better, in my opinion. Okay, Lock Every Door. Riley Sager. Like I said, there was a couple on here. I think this is the last Riley Sager I'm ranking, because this one's really popular as well. I've only read 3 of his books. This just wasn't it for me. It was okay. Like, the beginning was actually really good, and when she actually moves into the building in New York was really interesting. However, I just really don't think Riley Sager's for me, which is so weird, because Home Before Dark was the first book I ever read of his. And that's so confusing to me, because it's in my top 5 of all time. And then I kept reading his work, and I was like, what is going on? Is this the same author? Because he didn't write like this in Home Before Dark, or write his female characters like this. So I'm not sure what's going on. The characters were fine. It was just, this felt very basic. It's like kind of ironic that Ruth Ware is the quote on the front of this book, because it feels like a Ruth Ware novel, this one. Yeah, I think I gotta put it in same story, different author. I'm sorry. It's fine. It just feels very basic and very obvious, very simplistic, and just, yeah, I don't know. It's just not my thing. But this, The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Ward. What is this book? This book is wild. Like, you want a weird book that you have no idea what's coming. The people who say that they saw what was happening from a mile away, no, you didn't. No, you did not. You can guess like the big picture, but to get it down to like the details of what happens in the end, there is no way that you can know what's going on in this book. I almost stopped reading it because it was so bizarre and I did not understand what was going on, because it just was so weird. It started off so weird and I was like, what is happening? What am I reading? Like a cat? What is this? But then you finish it and it's like, whoa, that was wild, but it's kind of a masterpiece in my opinion, and I'm jealous of it. Definitely going in, I'm jealous, because I mean, I would never in a million years have thought of this story myself. I still want to read Sundial. I do own it. I've heard it's not as good as The Last House, but I still want to read it because her writing intrigues me, very much intrigues me. How she wrote this story is just bizarre. It's wild. So that's the best way to describe that book. So definitely I'm jealous. Wish I thought of that first, even though there was no chance that I would ever think about that story. The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. Beautiful book. Actually, like, so stunning. The writing is so good, like so beautiful the way he writes. I can't put my finger on why, but it is just stunning, a stunning work of art, this book. I'm going to put it in cult classics. I think it needs to be a classic at this point. Like, looking back in history and whatnot, I think we need to remember this book because it is so beautiful. I love the story. It does drag on a little bit, and I think that's what some people struggle with. So maybe it could also fit and needs a target audience because it is a little bit on the drier side, but some of the visuals described in this, oh my gosh. And I cried so much in the end. Like, what was that about? I don't know why I cried so much. Anyway, book was stunning. It was very beautiful, and I think everyone should read it. Next we have Pen Pal, which is really exciting because it was originally, I believe, a Reddit thread. And this author, Dathan Auerbach, would post his stories on Reddit. And it became so popular, he published a book for it. And I'm so grateful because I've never read this on Reddit. I never heard of it before. But the way that this book is laid out, like the actual formula it uses and like the different short stories throughout, but it's following the same character just at different stages of life, but still being stalked throughout his life. It is so horrifying, the most eerie visuals and descriptions you can imagine. This one is like very unsettling in the most simple ways. Like it's not gross, you know, it's not in your face horror. It's just unsettling, especially if you have like a fear of stalking or home invasions or, you know, like real life situation stuff. This feels real to me, like these stories in this book. And I'm gonna say this is definitely one that I'm jealous of. I'm jealous of a lot of authors, to be honest. I'm jealous of a lot of stories, wishing that I came up with it first. I love the layout of this one specifically though. Like that's very inspiring to me, and writing different short stories, especially because I'm a short fiction writer, and then compiling it that way into the book, it just works for me. It's so good. Next we have The Deep by Nick Cutter. Nick Cutter, again, acquired taste, I'm gonna say. He's disgusting. He writes gore and nasty, gross stuff. This is not as gross as some of his other work, which is in this video, don't worry. You know exactly which one I'm talking about. The Deep, though, by Nick Cutter is one of my favorite books of all time. Hands down. One of my favorite books of all time. This one's a tricky one, though, because it does go in top tier. Like that's where I'm gonna put it. But it also, I think, needs to be recognized as a target audience type of book. Not everyone is going to be as obsessed with this book as I am. Again, set around water. It's very horrifying. The descriptions that he writes in this book, I have so many like tabs that I bookmarked or like highlighted in this book for the writing alone, just like how beautiful he writes and like the mouthfeels of his words that he puts together. As a writer, he's so inspiring to me. It's just like, if I could write like that, oh my gosh. Don't expect my writing to be like any of these top tiers, by the way. Okay, just have your expectations down a little bit. But yeah, I admire these people a lot and I look up to them and they inspire me. But yeah, don't expect my writing to be like theirs, okay? Okay, next we have The Ruins by Scott Smith. Another one of my favorite books of all time. It's so good, and the movie does not compare at all to this book. I enjoy the movie for what it is. Like I saw the movie before I read the book, so I think that helped me appreciate the movie more, because I didn't know the source material well or anything. But like you can't compare them, because the movie does the story a little bit of a disservice in my opinion. And just if you don't like the movie, I think you'd still like this book. You cannot like compare like your liking of the movie to the liking of the book. It's just completely different, to the point where none of the characters do anything. Like they're all swapped around in the story. Like they're not who they are in the movies at all. Personally, I honestly think this isn't a story that I would personally write. I think it's gonna be a classic though. I think we're gonna look back on The Ruins and it's going to be like a piece of literature. The way it's written is so phenomenal. Beautiful descriptions, easy to read. This book is long, but it is so easy to read this quickly. Like it goes so fast. There's no chapters at all. It's one book, one chapter, and it's the whole book. And we do switch perspectives for each like paragraph chunk. You'll see it in the book. It's like split up by a little gap, and we switch perspectives, which is why it's so easy to read. And I just think the way it's written and the story and everything will be a piece of like classic horror literature one day. Okay, The Troop. I had to put it in here. Nick Cutter again. This is the one that's disgusting. Almost did not read any further works from him because of this book. It's great. Don't get me wrong. Can I say I enjoyed it? I don't know. It's something, that's for sure. It's disgusting though. You're gonna get body horror. You're gonna get animal horror. And he's known for his animal horror, and it's in all of his books. I think The Deep doesn't go as in depth as it does in this. This book I had to skip scenes completely, like pages of scenes, because I just cannot read animal horror that in depth, like that heavily detailed. I was able to get through The Deep. There is one scene in The Deep, but beyond that, it's really not that bad. Compared to this book, this is the book that has the most animal horror, so a lot of people write this one off, understandably. So given that, it's going in target audience. This is not for everyone. Absolutely not. I do not recommend this to every single person. His writing, again, phenomenal. He writes so well, but I cannot in good faith recommend this to people. The Deep is a little bit different. Just look up pages of trigger warnings and things. But The Troop is like his ultimate nasty, gross fest. So then we have The Woman in Black by Susan Hill. Again, similar to the movie, but different. This is more similar, I think, than The Haunting of Hill House to its adapted works. I really liked Woman in Black, the book. It was really short, really easy, digestible. Again, it is a classic, so I'm just gonna throw it up there, you know? It's very obvious that it's a classic. I still think it's an acquired taste because I think some people will read it as slow, like it goes a little bit slower, and it does, but I think it's still hauntingly beautiful, and I think the movie actually captured it really well. And I think Daniel Radcliffe captured the character pretty well as well. Okay, we're on to the last book in this ranking. We have The Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware. What a disappointing book. I like this book, but finishing on Ruth Ware is a little bit like, okay. This book was really good though. This one is one of her more entertaining ones, I would say. Out of the 3 that I've read, this one's my favorite because it is, again, a classic whodunit mystery thriller. Very straightforward, but it takes place on water. They're on a ship. It's a good story. It's a very solid story, and I really enjoy it. It's a good time, and it's still like mystery. You don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know. I think I'm gonna put it in needs a target audience. I think Ruth Ware in general just needs a target audience because just not everyone loves those mystery thrillers, you know, the whodunits, because that's all she writes, really. And correct me if I'm wrong, if, you know, she does indeed write something else that I just haven't read yet. But yeah, I gotta put it in there. So there we have it, my ranking of 20 popular horror books. How would you rank these? Any books that you think I missed? I probably haven't read them. I don't know. But now that you know my book taste a little bit more, maybe you could recommend some books that are very similar to the top 2 categories in this video that you think I would really enjoy that you don't think I've read yet. So yeah, leave a comment down below. Where would you rank any of these? Any of these that you read that you feel passionate about? I want to know your rankings of them and how you feel about these books. So leave a comment down below. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.